Daniel Carter adjusted his tie as the bright studio lights warmed his face. The set of Morning Talk buzzed with activity, a flurry of technicians adjusting cameras and sound equipment while producers whispered last-minute notes into their headsets. It was another typical day for the veteran journalist, but today's guest promised to make things a little more interesting. Dr. Harold Leavitt, a name familiar to anyone who followed science news, sat across from him in the sleek leather chair. With his sharp gray suit and neatly combed white hair, Leavitt looked every bit the part of the distinguished astrophysicist he was. The show began with Daniel asking about Leavitt's latest research project, a groundbreaking study on signals received from deep space. Leavitt spoke enthusiastically, explaining how these signals might hold clues to intelligent life beyond Earth. His words painted a picture of humanity, standing on the brink of discovery, teetering between fear and wonder. The audience listened, intently captivated by the idea that they might not be alone in the universe. As the conversation shifted toward current events, Daniel steered it toward lighter topics. "So, Dr. Leavitt," he said with a smile, leaning forward slightly, "you've been vocal about global issues lately. What are your thoughts on some of the recent developments? For example, the election of Pope Robert Prevost?" Leavitt paused, his expression thoughtful. He took a sip of water before responding, his voice calm but deliberate. "Well, Daniel, the election of any pope is always significant. But there's something unique about Pope Prevost." He leaned back in his chair, crossing one leg over the other. "There have been whispers, rumors really, that he has ties to certain classified matters." Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Classified matters? That sounds mysterious. Care to elaborate?" Leavitt hesitated again, glancing briefly at the camera as if weighing his next words carefully. "Let's just say that Pope Prevost may know more about humanity's place in the cosmos than most people realize. There are stories, unconfirmed, of course, about artifacts discovered decades ago, artifacts tied to extraterrestrial contact." The studio fell silent for a moment. Even the bustling crew seemed to freeze, caught off guard by the unexpected turn in the conversation. Daniel blinked, clearly surprised but recovering quickly. "Extraterrestrial contact? Are you suggesting that the Vatican has information about aliens?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Leavitt replied, raising a hand as if to ward off the implication. "But think about it. The Church has always been a keeper of ancient knowledge. And if evidence of alien life existed, where better to hide it than within the Vatican archives?" The audience erupted into murmurs, the tension palpable. Daniel pressed further, sensing the weight of what Leavitt had just implied. "Do you believe this is true? Do you think Pope Prevost knows something we don't?" Leavitt smiled faintly, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "I didn't say that. I only pointed out possibilities, whether or not they're true." He trailed off, leaving the question hanging in the air like smoke. By the time the segment ended, social media was ablaze with speculation. Clips of the interview spread rapidly, sparking debates across platforms. Some dismissed Leavitt's comments as wild conspiracy theories, while others latched onto them with fervor. Among those watching was Laura Bennett, a reporter for a mid-sized news outlet. She sat cross-legged on her couch, laptop open on her lap, scrolling through tweets and articles. Laura wasn't sure what to make of Leavitt's claims. She had covered enough strange stories in her career to know that sometimes truth could be stranger than fiction. Her curiosity piqued when she noticed recurring mentions of Roswell, New Mexico, the site of the infamous UFO incident in 1947. Could there be a connection? And why would Leavitt bring up the Pope during an interview about space? Determined to dig deeper, Laura decided to reach out to someone who might have answers. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for: Ryan Miller. A former NASA engineer, Ryan had worked on several classified projects before abruptly leaving the agency under unclear circumstances. They had crossed paths once during an investigative piece, and though their interaction had been brief, Laura remembered him as sharp-witted and resourceful. She sent him a text. "Hey, Ryan, got a minute? Need your take on something big." Minutes later, her phone buzzed with a reply. "Sure, what's up?" They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When Laura arrived, Ryan was already seated at a corner table, sipping black coffee. His scruffy beard and worn leather jacket gave him a rugged appearance, but his piercing blue eyes betrayed a keen intelligence. "So," Ryan began as Laura slid into the seat opposite him, "what's so big that you needed to drag me out here?" Laura wasted no time. She recounted Leavitt's interview, sharing screenshots of the most explosive moments. Ryan listened silently, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. "That guy doesn't mince words, does he?" Ryan said, rubbing the stubble on his chin. "If half of what he said is true, we're looking at a potential bombshell." "Exactly," Laura replied, leaning forward. "And I want to find out if there's any substance to it. You used to work on classified stuff at NASA. Ever hear anything about alien artifacts or Vatican secrets?" Ryan chuckled dryly. "You don't waste time, do you? Look, I can't confirm or deny anything specific. But yeah, there were rumors floating around back then. Nothing concrete, just whispers about old cases being reopened and strange directives coming down from higher-ups." "Higher-ups like who?" Laura pressed. Ryan shrugged. "That's the thing, nobody knew for sure. All I can tell you is that whatever it was, it scared the hell out of a lot of people." Laura nodded, jotting notes in her notebook. "Okay, so let's assume for a second that Leavitt isn't blowing smoke. Where do we start?" Ryan thought for a moment. "If the Vatican's involved, you'd need someone on the inside, someone who knows the archives well enough to spot anything unusual. And how do we find that person?" Laura asked. Ryan grinned. "Leave that to me. I might know a guy." As they left the cafe, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that they were onto something extraordinary. If Leavitt's words held even a grain of truth, the implications could change everything. Humanity's understanding of its place in the universe, and perhaps its very future, might hinge on unraveling the mystery he had dared to hint at. For now, all they had were questions, but Laura was determined to find answers no matter where the trail led. Back at the hotel, Laura and Ryan spread the stolen documents across the room's small table. The dim light from the bedside lamp cast long shadows over the delicate pages, each one filled with cryptic symbols and intricate drawings. They worked, quietly, their movements deliberate as they tried to make sense of what they had uncovered. "This is incredible," Ryan murmured, tracing a finger along the edge of one diagram. "Look at this. These aren't just random designs. This looks like some kind of blueprint for advanced technology." Laura nodded, her eyes scanning another page covered in Latin text. She pulled out her phone and opened a translation app, typing in fragments of the writing. Slowly, bits of meaning began to emerge. "It talks about celestial beings visiting Earth," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "And something about a convergence. A cosmic event that will happen soon." "A convergence?" Ryan asked, leaning closer. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet," Laura admitted. "But there's more. It mentions someone called the Chosen One. Someone who will guide humanity through whatever happens." Ryan frowned, his brow furrowing as he connected the dots. "You think it's talking about Pope Prevost?" "It fits," Laura replied softly. "Think about it, his sudden rise to power, the hints Leavitt dropped during the interview, even Father Hayes's comments. Maybe there's more to him than we thought." As they continued deciphering the documents, a knock on the door startled them both. Laura froze, her heart racing. Ryan moved cautiously toward the door, peering through the peephole. Standing in the hallway was a nun, her habit crisp and white against the dim corridor lighting. "Who is it?" Laura whispered nervously. "She says her name is Sister Clara Dawson," Ryan answered after checking. "She claims she knows why we're here." Laura hesitated, then nodded. "Let her in. But be careful." Ryan unlocked the door and Sister Clara stepped inside. Her presence was calm but commanding, her sharp blue eyes taking in the scattered documents without missing a detail. "I see you've found some of what you were looking for," she said, closing the door behind her. "Who are you?" Laura demanded, standing up straighter. How do you know about this? Sister Clara smiled faintly, pulling up a chair to join them at the table. My name is Clara Dawson, and I am, or was, a member of the Order of Celestial Truth. I've been watching you since you arrived in Rome. Ryan crossed his arms, suspicion etched on his face. Why should we trust you? Because I want the same thing you do, Sister Clara replied firmly. The truth. For far too long, the Church has kept these secrets hidden, using fear and control to maintain its power. But times are changing, and people deserve to know the truth about their place in the universe. Laura studied her carefully, searching for any sign of deception. If you're really part of this order, why help us now? Why not stop us earlier? Sister Clara sighed, her expression softening. Because I saw how determined you were, and because I believe the time has come for these secrets to be revealed. Humanity cannot face what's coming unprepared. What's coming? Ryan pressed, leaning forward. The convergence, Sister Clara explained. An alignment of cosmic energies that will affect all life on Earth. According to the texts, it will bring both challenges and opportunities. But only those who understand its significance can navigate it safely. Laura felt a chill run down her spine. And Pope Prevost, is he the chosen one mentioned in the documents? Sister Clara nodded slowly. He carries a unique connection to the celestial beings described in the texts. Whether he fully understands his role or not remains unclear. But his ascension to the papacy was no accident, it was foretold. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Laura glanced at Ryan, who looked equally stunned. If this is true, she said finally, then we need to share this information with the world. People have a right to know. Sister Clara shook her head firmly. Not yet. Releasing this prematurely could cause panic, or worse, manipulation, by those seeking to exploit it for their own gain. We must proceed carefully. Ryan frowned. So what do you suggest we do? We gather more evidence, Sister Clara replied. There are other artifacts and texts hidden throughout the Vatican. If we can retrieve them, we'll have a clearer picture of what lies ahead. Laura hesitated, torn between urgency and caution. How much time do we have? Not much, Sister Clara admitted grimly. The convergence is closer than anyone realizes. Days, perhaps weeks at most. Over the next few days, the trio worked tirelessly, planning their next move. With Sister Clara's inside knowledge, they identified several locations within Vatican City where additional artifacts might be stored. Each location posed its own risks, but they knew they couldn't afford to wait. Meanwhile, Agent Paul Monroe arrived in Rome, his presence casting a shadow over their efforts. A seasoned operative with a reputation for efficiency, Monroe had been tasked with silencing anyone threatening to expose classified information. He had already tracked Laura and Ryan's movements to the hotel, though he hadn't yet discovered Sister Clara's involvement. On their second attempt to infiltrate the Vatican, Laura and Ryan encountered unexpected resistance. Security checkpoints had been tightened and guards seemed unusually vigilant. As they navigated the labyrinthine halls, they narrowly avoided detection multiple times. Just when it seemed they would reach their target, a locked vault beneath the library, Monroe appeared, flanked by two armed men. "Stop right there," Monroe ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. "You're under arrest." Thinking quickly, Ryan shoved a nearby bookshelf, causing it to topple and block the hallway. "Run!" he shouted to Laura and Sister Clara, who were waiting nearby. They sprinted through the corridors, dodging alarms and slamming doors behind them. Sister Clara led the way, her familiarity with the layout proving invaluable. Finally, they burst into a secluded courtyard where a waiting car idled. Alex Rivera, who had flown in to assist, leaned out the window. "Get in!" he yelled. They piled into the vehicle just as Monroe and his men emerged from the building, shouting orders. Tires screeched as Alex sped away, weaving through narrow streets until they reached a safe house on the outskirts of the city. Inside, they regrouped, breathless but alive. "That was too close," Ryan muttered, sinking into a chair. Laura nodded, still clutching the backpack containing the newly acquired artifacts. We got what we came for, though. Now we just need to figure out what it all means. Sister Clara examined the items they had retrieved, her expression growing increasingly grave. This confirms it, she said finally. The convergence is real, and it's happening sooner than expected. As night fell, they huddled around a laptop, piecing together the fragments of information. What they uncovered painted a startling picture. Humanity stood on the brink of an unprecedented event, one that would test its resilience and unity. The question remained, were they ready? Laura glanced at Ryan, then at Sister Clara, determination hardening in her gaze. Whatever happens next, she said firmly. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We owe it to the world to get this right. The safe house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the laptop and the occasional rustle of papers as Laura, Ryan, and Sister Clara worked late into the night. The artifacts they had retrieved from the Vatican were spread out across the table, each one offering a new piece of the puzzle. Laura stared at a diagram etched onto a thin metal plate, its intricate patterns glowing faintly under the lamp's dim light. It looked like a map of the stars, but something about it felt alive. This is incredible, Ryan murmured, his voice tinged with awe. Look at this. These coordinates point to specific locations in space. And these symbols here? They're instructions. Instructions for what? Laura asked, leaning closer. I don't know yet, Ryan admitted. But whatever it is, it's way beyond anything we've ever seen before. It's like a guide for navigating something massive. Sister Clara nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. The texts speak of a convergence, a meeting of cosmic forces that will affect all life on Earth. These maps might show us where it's happening or how to prepare for it. Laura frowned, her mind racing. If this is real, and if it's happening soon, then we need to warn people. But how do we explain this without sounding crazy? We start small, Sister Clara suggested. We share fragments of the truth, enough to spark curiosity but not panic. Once people see the evidence, they'll begin to understand. Ryan shook his head. That's easier said than done. Someone's going to try to shut us down. Monroe's already breathing down our necks, and he's just the beginning. As if on cue, Alex burst into the room, his face pale. Bad news, he said breathlessly. Monroe knows where we are. He's mobilizing a team. We've got maybe an hour before they get here. Laura's heart sank. We can't stay here. No, Sister Clara agreed, standing up quickly. We need to move the operation somewhere secure, somewhere no one would think to look. Ryan grabbed the backpack containing the artifacts while Laura packed up their notes. Where do we go? She asked urgently. There's an old monastery outside the city, Sister Clara replied. It's abandoned, but it has everything. We need to lay low for a while. With no time to waste, they piled into the car and sped away from the safe house. Behind them, red and blue lights flashed in the distance. Monroe's men were closing in. Alex took sharp turns through narrow alleys, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. Finally, they reached the outskirts of Rome, where the monastery loomed against the horizon, its stone walls crumbling with age. Inside, the air was cool and musty, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten prayers. They set up camp in what appeared to be a former chapel, its stained glass windows casting colorful patterns on the floor. For the first time since their escape, they allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Over the next few days, they focused on decoding the remaining artifacts. With Sister Clara's help, they translated more of the Latin text, uncovering references to celestial beings who had visited Earth centuries ago. According to the documents, these beings had left behind messages, warnings about the convergence, and guidance for surviving it. It's like they wanted us to find this, Laura said, running her fingers over a fragile parchment. They knew we'd reach this point someday. They did, Sister Clara confirmed. The Order has spent centuries protecting this knowledge, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. That moment is now. Ryan glanced at her, his brow furrowed. But why? Why wait until the last minute? Because humanity wasn't ready before, Sister Clara explained. Now, with technology advancing and global awareness growing, we have a chance to unite rather than divide. The convergence could be our greatest challenge, or our greatest opportunity. As they pieced together the final details, Laura realized they couldn't keep this information hidden any longer. She opened her laptop and began drafting an article, carefully choosing her words to balance truth with caution. She included photos of the artifacts and summarized their findings, emphasizing the need for further investigation rather than outright alarm. Before publishing, she sent the draft to Ryan and Sister Clara for review. Both approved, though Sister Clara added a note of warning. "This will change everything," she said gravely. "Be prepared for backlash, from governments, from religious leaders, from skeptics. Not everyone will want to believe." "I know," Laura replied, her resolve firm. "But we owe it to the world to try." With a deep breath, she hit publish. Within minutes, the article went viral, sparking debates across social media and news outlets worldwide. Some dismissed it as fiction, while others called for immediate action. Scientists, theologians, and conspiracy theorists alike weighed in, each offering their own interpretation of the evidence. Amid the chaos, Pope Prevost made a surprise announcement during a live broadcast from Vatican City. Standing before a global audience, he spoke calmly but with undeniable conviction. "Humanity stands at a crossroads," he began, his voice steady. "For too long, we have looked to the skies with fear and uncertainty. But today, I tell you this: we are not alone." The crowd erupted into murmurs, stunned by his words. He continued, referencing ancient texts and modern discoveries, hinting at the existence of extraterrestrial life and the impending cosmic event described in the artifacts. Though he stopped short of confirming the convergence directly, his message was clear. Humanity needed to prepare for something extraordinary. Laura watched the speech from the monastery, her heart pounding. "He knows," she whispered. "He really knows." Ryan nodded, his expression grim. "Which means we're running out of time." That night, strange lights appeared in the sky, visible across continents. At first, people assumed they were meteors or satellites, but as the lights grew brighter and more numerous, unease spread. Reports flooded in from every corner of the globe. Videos, photos, eyewitness accounts, all pointing to the same phenomenon. Laura stepped outside the monastery, gazing up at the luminous display. The lights pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, filling the air with an otherworldly energy. Ryan joined her moments later, his face illuminated by the glow. "What do you think it means?" he asked quietly. "I think it's starting," Laura replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The convergence. Back inside, Sister Clara stood before the artifacts, her hands clasped tightly. "This is it," she said, turning to face them. "The moment we've been preparing for. Whatever happens next, we must remain united. Humanity's survival depends on it." As dawn broke over the horizon, the world held its collective breath, unsure of what the future held. For Laura, Ryan, and Sister Clara, the journey was far from over, but they knew one thing for certain. The truth had finally come to light, and there was no turning back. The next morning, Laura sat at her desk in the cramped office of her news outlet, staring at the notes she had scribbled during her meeting with Ryan. Her mind raced with possibilities. If there was even a shred of truth to what Dr. Leavitt had said, this story could be the biggest of her career. But how could she prove it? She needed evidence, something tangible that would either confirm or debunk the claims. Ryan had promised to help, but he hadn't given her much to go on yet. He mentioned knowing someone who might have insight into Vatican archives, but details were scarce. Laura decided to do some digging on her own while she waited for him to follow up. She started by reviewing old newspaper clippings and declassified government documents related to Roswell. The more she read, the more she noticed patterns, small references here and there to unidentified objects and classified materials. Nothing concrete, but enough to keep her suspicions alive. Later that afternoon, Ryan called. His voice was low and urgent. "I found someone," he said without preamble. "Father Matthew Hayes, he's a priest based in Boston. Used to work as a librarian at the Vatican before transferring to a small parish. If anyone knows something about those archives, it's him. Do you think he'll talk? Laura asked, grabbing her notebook. I don't know, Ryan admitted, but it's worth a shot. I'll send you his contact info. You should reach out. Laura thanked him and immediately drafted an email to Father Hayes, introducing herself and explaining her interest in learning more about historical artifacts stored in the Vatican. She kept her tone polite and professional, careful not to raise suspicion. By evening, she received a reply. Father Hayes agreed to meet her the following week. Though his message was brief and guarded, the flight to Boston felt endless. Laura spent most of it reviewing what little information she had gathered so far. When she landed, she rented a car and drove to St. Joseph's Church, a modest brick building nestled in a quiet neighborhood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of incense and polished wood. Father Hayes greeted her warmly, though his piercing, green eyes betrayed a hint of caution. They sat in a small side room off the main sanctuary, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. Father Hayes listened intently as Laura explained why she was there. When she mentioned Dr. Leavitt's interview and the rumors about alien artifacts, his expression darkened. These are dangerous waters you're treading, he said finally, folding his hands on the table. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But if they're true, Laura countered, leaning forward, don't people deserve to know? This isn't just about history. It's about our future. Father, Hayes sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. After a long pause, he spoke again. There is a group within the church. He began slowly, choosing his words carefully. They call themselves the Order of Celestial Truth. Their purpose is to safeguard knowledge that could disrupt the world as we know it. What kind of knowledge? Laura pressed, her heart pounding. The kind that challenges everything we believe. Father Hayes replied cryptically. Stories of celestial beings visiting Earth long ago. Artifacts left behind as proof. Warnings etched in stone about events yet to come. Laura's pen hovered over her notebook. And Pope Prevost? Is he connected to this? Father Hayes hesitated, then nodded slightly. He has ties to the order. Whether he fully understands their mission or not, I cannot say. But his rise to power was unusual. Some believe he was chosen for a specific reason. Laura's mind raced. Do you think he knows about these artifacts about aliens? I can't answer that, Father Hayes said firmly. What I will tell you is this. The answers you seek may lie in Vatican City. But tread carefully. Not everyone wants the truth to come out. As they parted ways, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that Father Hayes knew more than he was letting on. Still, his words gave her a starting point. She called Ryan as soon as she got back to her hotel. We need to get into the Vatican, she told him bluntly. Ryan laughed dryly. Easier said than done, that place is locked tighter than Fort Knox. I'm serious, Laura insisted. If there's even a chance these artifacts exist, we have to try. Ryan sighed. All right, let me think about it. There might be a way, but it won't be easy, and it definitely won't be legal. Over the next few days, Ryan reached out to contacts from his days at NASA. One name kept coming up, Alex Rivera, a tech-savvy hacker with a reputation for pulling off impossible jobs. Through a series of encrypted messages, Ryan arranged a meeting with Alex in New York City. Alex turned out to be younger than Laura expected. A wiry man in his late 20s with messy black hair and a hoodie emblazoned with the logo of a video game company. Despite his laid-back appearance, his sharp mind was evident the moment he started talking. So, Alex said, cracking his knuckles as they sat in a dimly lit diner booth. You want fake credentials good enough to fool the Vatican? Bold move. It's not just about fooling them, Laura clarified. We need access to restricted areas, to the archives. Alex raised an eyebrow. You realize this isn't exactly a beginner-level job, right? Even if I forge IDs for you, getting past security will be another challenge entirely. We'll figure it out, Ryan interjected. Just get us in the door. Alex smirked. All right, but it'll cost you. And I mean cost you. This isn't pocket change we're talking about. Laura didn't hesitate. Money isn't an issue. Just make sure it works. As Alex got to work, Laura and Ryan began planning their trip to Rome. They studied floor plans of the Vatican Library, memorized employee schedules, and rehearsed cover stories until they could recite them in their sleep. The stakes were high, but neither of them doubted the importance of what they were doing. When the day finally came, they boarded a flight to Italy, armed with forged IDs and a sense of determination. As the plane soared above the clouds, Laura stared out the window, her thoughts swirling. She knew they were stepping into uncharted territory, risking everything for the sake of uncovering the truth. But deep down, she believed it was worth it. For better or worse, the world deserved to know what lay hidden in the shadows of its oldest institutions. Upon arriving in Rome, they checked into a nondescript hotel near Vatican City. The streets buzzed with tourists and locals alike, oblivious to the secrets lurking behind the ancient walls. Laura and Ryan spent their first day scouting the area, familiarizing themselves with entrances and exits, security checkpoints, and surveillance cameras. That night, they met Alex via video call to review the final details. "Your IDs check out," he assured them. "But remember, once you're inside, you're on your own. Don't screw this up." "We won't," Laura promised, though her stomach churned with nerves. The next morning, dressed in plain clothes designed to blend in with Vatican staff, they approached the library entrance. Heart-pounding, Laura handed over her ID to the guard, who scanned it briefly before nodding and waving her through. Ryan followed close behind, exhaling sharply once they were safely inside. The library was vast, its shelves stretching endlessly in every direction. Ancient manuscripts and dusty tomes lined the walls, each one holding centuries of knowledge. Laura and Ryan split up, searching for anything that matched the descriptions Father Hayes had provided. Hours passed without success. Just as frustration began to set in, Laura stumbled upon a hidden alcove tucked away behind a row of bookshelves. Inside, she found a locked chest adorned with strange symbols. Her pulse quickened as she realized this could be it, the artifact they'd been searching for. She signaled for Ryan, who joined her moments later. Together, they pried open the chest using tools Alex had supplied. Inside, they discovered a collection of fragile documents and diagrams unlike anything they'd ever seen. The writings were in Latin, but the illustrations depicted advanced machinery and celestial maps. This changes everything," Ryan whispered, his voice trembling. The world woke up to a sky transformed. The strange lights that had appeared overnight lingered, casting an ethereal glow over cities, deserts, and oceans alike. Scientists scrambled to explain the phenomenon, but their instruments registered nothing unusual. No radiation spikes, no gravitational anomalies, nothing that could account for what billions of people were witnessing with their own eyes. Social media exploded with theories, ranging from divine intervention to alien invasions. But one thing was undeniable. Earth was experiencing something extraordinary. Laura stood outside the monastery, her arms crossed as she stared at the pulsating lights above. Ryan approached her holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you haven't slept," he said, handing her one of the cups. "I haven't," Laura admitted, taking a sip. "How could I? This is it, the moment we've been waiting for. Everything we've uncovered, everything Pope Prevost hinted at, it's all coming together." Ryan nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Do you think it's dangerous?" "I don't know," Laura replied honestly. "But Sister Clara seems convinced it's more than just a light show. If the artifacts are right, this could change everything about how we see ourselves and our place in the universe." Inside, Sister Clara sat surrounded by the artifacts, her expression calm but focused. She traced her fingers over the metal plate with the star map, muttering softly under her breath. When Laura and Ryan joined her, she looked up, her eyes filled with both hope and apprehension. "The convergence has begun," she said simply. "These lights are a sign, a message meant to guide us. But whether we heed it or ignore it is up to us." "What happens next?" Ryan asked, sitting down beside her. "That depends on humanity," Sister Clara explained. "The text described the convergence as a test, a chance for us to grow, to unite, to embrace our shared destiny. But if we fail, if fear and division take hold, the consequences could be catastrophic. Laura frowned, setting her coffee aside. And Pope Prevost? What role does he play in all this? Sister Clara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. He is pivotal. His connection to the celestial beings mentioned in the text makes him uniquely suited to lead during this time. Whether he fully understands his purpose remains unclear, but his actions will shape the outcome. As they spoke, news reports poured in from around the globe. Governments issued statements urging calm, while religious leaders called for prayer and reflection. In some places, protests erupted as people grappled with the unknown. Yet amid the chaos, there were also moments of unity, strangers helping each other, communities coming together, and even enemies laying down their weapons in awe of the celestial display. Days passed and the lights grew brighter, their rhythm shifting subtly. Scientists began to notice changes in Earth's atmosphere, not harmful ones, but enhancements. Air quality improved, temperatures stabilized, and crops flourished in areas once plagued by drought. It was as though the planet itself was being revitalized. Laura realized they needed to act quickly. With the world watching, she arranged a private meeting with Pope Prevost through intermediaries. Her request was bold, but given the circumstances, Vatican officials agreed to facilitate it. The meeting took place in a secluded garden within Vatican City. Pope Prevost greeted Laura warmly, his presence radiating calm authority. Dressed in simple white robes, he seemed more like a humble servant than the leader of one of the world's most powerful institutions. "Ms. Bennett," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "I understand you have questions." Laura nodded, pulling out her notebook. "Your Holiness, I need to know, is what's happening in the skies connected to the artifacts we found, to the order of celestial truth?" Pope Prevost smiled faintly, his gaze distant. "What do you believe, Ms. Bennett?" "I believe the convergence is real," Laura replied firmly. "And I believe you know more about it than you've let on." The Pope sighed, leaning back in his chair. "It is true that I have seen things, visions if you will, that align with the knowledge preserved by the order. These visions speak of a great awakening, a time when humanity will step into its full potential. But whether I am the chosen one or merely a vessel for this message, I cannot say." Laura pressed further. "Then why keep it hidden? Why not share this with the world sooner?" "Because truth without context can be dangerous," Pope Prevost answered. "Imagine a world unprepared for such revelations, a world divided by fear and misunderstanding. My duty has been to ensure that when the time came, humanity would be ready." "And now?" Laura asked. "Are we ready?" Pope Prevost paused, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps not entirely, but readiness is not perfection, it is willingness. And I believe the human spirit is capable of great things when called upon." With the Pope's blessing, Laura and Ryan returned to the United States, determined to spread the message responsibly. They worked tirelessly, collaborating with scientists, theologians, and journalists to present the evidence in a way that encouraged curiosity rather than panic. Their efforts sparked global discussions, bringing people together across cultural and ideological divides. In the weeks that followed, the convergence reached its peak. The lights in the sky coalesced into a dazzling display, bathing the earth in a warm, golden glow. Millions reported feeling a profound sense of peace, as though the universe itself was embracing them. No disasters occurred. Instead, the event seemed to leave behind a legacy of renewal, not just for the planet but for humanity's collective consciousness. As life slowly returned to normal, Laura reflected on everything that had happened. Sitting on her apartment balcony one evening, she gazed at the stars, now clearer and brighter than ever before. Ryan joined her, holding 2 glasses of wine. "To the future," he said, raising his glass. Laura clinked hers against his, smiling softly. "To the future, and to the truth." Though the convergence had ended, its impact lingered. People continued to talk, to dream, to imagine what lay beyond the stars. For Laura, Ryan, and countless others, the journey had only just begun. Whatever challenges lay ahead, They faced them with newfound hope, knowing that humanity's story was far greater and far stranger than anyone had ever imagined.